wasn't with the man that I married. I wasn't with my lover. He was gone, and I was certainly not the woman that I was as well. And I started to do some of my own personal work, my own, journey into spending some time in women's circles and spending some time with, seeing what was happening in the outside world, and realized that I'd lost a part of myself. Number one, I was like, there's a big chunk of me who was gone, and I missed her, but I didn't know how to bring her back.
What happens when two people who were madly in love slowly become strangers living under the same roof? And neither of them know how that happened. Welcome to New Paradigm Intimacy. I'm your host, Victoria Bardovich, and today I sit down with relationship coach Amy Stuth. She and her husband turned their own broken marriage into a roadmap to help couples do the same. We explore how long-term couples drift into the roommate dynamic and how small daily practices can rebuild connection before it's too late. If your relationship has lost its spark, this one's for you. So today we're going to talk a little bit about how people in long-term relationships end up in this kind of roommate experience. And I would just love to hear from you, like, how does this happen? Why is it that we as humans have this transition from sometimes really hot lover experiences into roommates? So what is going on there?
Yeah, such a great question. And I think it's so common and so alive in a lot of couples these days, because it's like this honeymoon phase and everything's amazing and juicy and the hormones are flowing. And then, the reality kind of phase kicks in. And in that reality phase comes all this pressure, all this extra, like maybe children, mortgages, they start to settle down. And the relationship, often what we've found through the couples that we worked with, takes a back seat. It's like, oh yeah, we're married now, or we're, solidified the relationship by buying a property together. So that's the thing that goes, by the wayside. And then we end up kind of just in this logistical step by step. You do this, I do that, and we miss each other, and we lose that connection, that lover's energy that happens just not quickly. It's often over time. It's often this gradual, slow drift that couples experience from a range of time frames. But what we've noticed is it is quite slow, and it's quite sneaky how it drops into relationships, particularly long-term ones.
And I'd love to hear about like your own personal experience of that. Like, how has that been for you?
Yeah, I guess we were proper candidates of it, like it was always our dream. Michael and I spent a lot of time together before we had children, so which was great. So the honeymoon period was kind of extended for us. But then as soon as the kids came along, Michael and I have been married for over 20 years. So our children are 15 and 13, but those first formative years of the kids' lives, like from 1 till 5, we were definitely stuck in this real like stalemate, roommates, logistics of life, just doing side by side sort of ships in the night. And it got really toxic. It got really horrible. I wasn't seeing him. He wasn't seeing me. I was really desperately lonely. I couldn't reach out because he was a full-time paramedic and he was working shifts, and I kind of felt like I had to just hold it all myself. So it got pretty tough for us in that roommate phase, but it kind of almost was like, I wouldn't even want to be your roommate sometimes. It got even worse than roommates, where it was the conversation and the conflict was just we were just on edge, just walking on eggshells all the time, and kind of really grinding each other, but not knowing why. I'm like, I don't know why, what's going on here? And we just continued to live on. So yeah, I guess that's kind of our experience, and it took a real change for us to shift into what we are now, into this real like lovers and connected and beautiful space that I would wish lots of long-term relationships could be in that space as well.
And what was like that turning point? Like, how deep were you in before the turning point came as well?
Yeah, I think for me, I was kind of becoming a little bit more conscious of what was happening. Like I was kind of starting to see from the fog, out of the fog and into a bit like, what is happening here? This is happening for too long. Maybe it had been 5 or 6 years where I just felt like I wasn't with the man that I married. I wasn't with my lover. He was gone, and I was certainly not the woman that I was as well. And I started to do some of my own personal work, my own, journey into spending some time in women's circles and spending some time with, seeing what was happening in the outside world, and realized that I'd lost a part of myself. Number one, I was like, there's a big chunk of me who was gone. And I missed her, but I didn't know how to bring her back. And I just witnessed Michael continuing on his life and his journey and his busyness, and he's creating more and more work because that's where he was feeling fulfilled and he was feeling like he was worthy enough by just doing more. So he created all these businesses and not for profits, and but yet we were getting more and more distant. I was definitely yeah, really lonely at this point. And then I ended up writing him a letter. This is probably after about 2 years of my own journey of self discovery, slowly, obviously, with two little kids at home. So I was a mum as well and trying to work. But I wrote him a letter and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm like, I don't know what's happening to us. I really miss us. I miss that we can't even really communicate. I feel so alone. I'm communicating more to my friends about stuff than I am to you. And we need to change. And it really was kind of a bit of a hard line. I was at my point where I didn't know what else to do. And thankfully and so gratefully that he took that on board, and he did a bit of soul searching himself and started to kind of do his little personal work and journey of like, who am I as a man? I was this hyper independent woman as well. So I was I pushed him away a lot. So he couldn't step up into that leadership role, which I was desiring and craving as a full-time mum. But we'd created this push pull energy and dynamic where I had to kind of control and micromanage because I couldn't feel safe in that environment because he wasn't there to lead the house and lead that family. But thankfully, as I said, he did his work, and we kind of journeyed together through it. And yeah, the things that we actually did to recreate their relationship and move back into that lover's energy is the very thing that we now share, like, and did a lot of research and study. And yeah, so it's kind of nice to be able to help other couples to kind of go from that low point to, yeah, a really vibrant energy again.
Fantastic. I mean, it's just so relieving to hear that you can, like, that things can die in relationships and that a new chapter can be reborn, you know? Yeah. And I
Yeah.
just think that, like, of course, you work with so many of these people, but this has been similar story for what I've had people on my couch, you know, because I also do work in the relationship realm. And it's been very similar. And I find that actually, like, I think the place that you're in sounds actually quite good because I hear a lot of people go into that resentment space and it's like they don't even miss their partner, you know, they don't even want to be close to them, you know. So I
Mm.
think there's like, yeah, there's a curiosity of like, I actually really like what you said about this, like, irritation you were feeling towards your roommate, and it's also, like, how much of that is even about them when we're in that kind of sleep deprivation, motherhood, you know, experience of life, and the recognition that how much just comes onto the partner automatically, right? So yeah, I
Mm.
would love to hear, like, what are the practices that you guys did do that really you feel like really rekindled something? And is it better than it was before, or is it just different? I'm curious.
Yeah, great questions. I want to start with that one first. I feel like it's better than it was before. And I think
Yeah.
that's it's amazing to think that, because I didn't think that was possible, you know, when you first fall in love and all of that stuff. But maybe I'm biased because I'm in this now, you know, as opposed it's trying to transport yourself back in 20 years or whatever. But um I think a lot of couples, when they come to us as well, they're like, I just want to get back to what we were, you know, and I kind of find that actually a little challenging. I'm like, I don't know if I can do that. Like, I don't know if we can help you to get back to
Yeah.
what you were, because you're changed, you're evolved, you're a different person, you're a different, you know, you operate differently to when 10 years ago, or you know, however long they've been together. And I said, and actually it's beautiful. This, we call it the mature love phase. You know, it's like a different phase of your relationship where you're not people pleasing anymore. You're not, you know, you're not so awkward with discussing things. You're more mature. You kind of understand yourself more, ideally. I mean, we're in our mid 40s, so it's a transition into a whole nother beautiful relationship that just blossoms even deeper when you can create the space. So that kind of leads into what you were saying about what did we do to start to make these changes. And the very first step of this, what I discovered, is looking at myself, you know, really taking this hard look at how I was playing into the dynamic and the relationship and the negative impact that I was actually contributing to this space. And as soon as I started taking ownership and responsibility for my behaviors, and in my case, as I mentioned, I was quite controlling. I was the micromanager. And obviously, that really shut Michael down, and he started to question his own self worth, his identity as a man. I can't get it right anyway, so I might as well just go and hang out with my mates and go to the pub and like all of that kind of self talk that he was experiencing. But then he had to do the same. He had to really look at his own patterns and the way he was showing up or not showing up in relationships. So the first step of kind of recreating a lover's relationship is looking at self, taking a deep look at what am I contributing and how can I maybe get better. And as soon as I started that, because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I was a bit of a leader in the relationship space. I was the one going, I really desired change. I really wanted to have this like relationship blossoming and healthy, particularly because the kids, like it was another driving factor that we're bringing up children in this as well. So I didn't want them to witness an unhealthy dynamic. And I mean, my mum and dad were great, but I didn't get great role models of how a healthy relationship was either. So it's also important, I believe, to mention that sometimes we're not coming in under knowing how to do this. We're not knowing like the rule book or the role models that we had aren't always the best. So yeah, my desire to really recreate a relationship was deep, and I didn't want to just give up. So yeah, that self work was hard, but as soon as I started taking like, hey babe, I noticed that I'm controlling here. I've really kind of, what it might have been, even like cooking dinner, like taking over and just here, look out, I'll do that. And he'd be like, shut down, and I can't do it right. So, I'd be reinforcing his self-belief as well. So noticing that, speaking into it, owning my part, acknowledging the impact that my behavior has on him. That was kind of one of the first steps, I suppose, which was it is a big step, but it was an important one because that was a ripple effect. Because then he started looking at his behaviors and how they were impacting us and the relationship as well. So yeah. Yeah.
It's big stuff. I love that. Yeah, I mean, there's so much curiosity for me, like where things were at when you guys were having that breakdown, like I know for myself, our little boy is 11 months. He's our first baby. And we're definitely in that transition, like we've been epic lovers for 6 years, and now I'm like, oh, this is different, like I'm not used to not being in connection most days and, all that different stuff. And we're definitely in that adaptation. And we are doing, most weeks we'll have a date night and things like that, and we'll really take time for that connection. But yeah, I'm just curious to hear, yeah, like I can also see what you're speaking to, like the possibility for things to just dwindle because of like that. It's just not the priority at the moment. It's like vitality and like giving to self is the priority when you've got a baby that doesn't sleep through the night. But yeah, I guess there's a curiosity on what your wisdom would be for, I am, we are the younger married couple with the baby now. So I'm 35, so I'm curious what you would say to your 35 self, or maybe even younger for you, a bit younger by sounds of it.
Yeah, great. I thank you. I love that you're curious, and I love that I'm hoping that more people can be curious in that stage of their relationship and life too, because I felt like I was so naive and so unaware of what would happen or what could happen if your relationship isn't prioritized. You hit the nail on the head. I think that's exactly what you said. It's like other things become priority, and it's so normal for that too, because we're like, oh, children, they're so needy. They're so much energy that they take from us and we give to them, and everything else kind of becomes second. But often we see in our work that we do, we see the other side of that, where actually couples are kind of like empty nesters. Their babies are gone and they're like, who are you? Like, I don't even know who you are. And then trying to rekindle that, like that's a whole nother, another chapter. But I feel like for you guys, what comes to mind for my younger self, if I could redo those times, is something so small, and it's the consistency of of checking in and or sharing. It's like the consistency of really having maybe 10, 15 minutes a day to just devoting to each other, with phones away, babies asleep ideally, and you make each other a priority, and you ask each other some a bit more deeper questions than just, oh, what happened today, what bills need to be paid, what time did the baby sleep today, those logistics, right? So if we can go into that, just that next level, and say, what's on your heart today, what's been challenging for you, or how can I support you in that? So sometimes just those small check-in moments that you can create as a little bit of a ritual and box out the world for that 10, 15 minutes is
Mm,
going to help that connection, because number one, you're going to feel so much more heard and so much more appreciated, I suppose, as well, because you just take that time just for the two of you with nothing
mm,
else kind of interrupting that. And that alone helps to fill your own cup and that relationship cup as well.
mm. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. And yeah, it's that you're obviously helping like most sort of sections then. You're helping the young people that have just had babies, and you're also helping people that have let go, their children have moved out. And I guess in the middle of it as well, which it sounds like, like the teenagers, the young, what do you feel is, yeah, like what's the most challenging time for people to come into their lovership? What's the easiest time for people to come into lovership, or in sort of that, the stages of life? I'm curious.
That is a good point. I just think there's different versions of it. I feel like
Yeah.
there's, yeah, it's possible through all those phases, but
Mm,
I feel like there's, I think lovers is a very broad term as well. But I guess that the message that I would like to get across is that lovers mean that it's not you're going deeper than just the surface level stuff. Like you're understanding and hearing and seeing your partner in a deeper way than just, yeah, the management of the house or the chores or the job. So yeah, there's different phases. I think for the couples that we see are all sections of that. That they're the couples that potentially the child has actually created a little bit of a challenge in their relationship in general, because there's parenting style differences, and and
right.
there's all sorts of communication issues. So I think that, yeah, that check-in process though, that 10 to 15 minutes will be effective wherever anyone's at, because it's just really prioritizing the relationship. And Michael and I like to, you might have heard this as well, but we like to kind of create this image for people to realize that there's like Amy and there's Michael in the relationship, but there's also this entity of the relationship itself, and
Mhm.
that in itself is like a whole separate energy. And when we're continually, this is what we were doing in our like challenging times, we were siphoning from that bubble or
Yeah.
that energy. We were just like, "You're not meeting my needs. You're not showing up. You're not even home," and all of that negativity. But I was really like, yeah, I could see I was sucking the life out of the the relationship, and it was empty, and it was resentment was built, and he was doing the same. You should just relax more. Why are you so that in itself is creating this toxic energy between the two of you. But if we can imagine that this energy of the relationship is like a bank account, and we can deposit, even like if we did 10 minutes a day, if we just deposit little amounts of time or little amounts of connection daily into this account, it's only going to continue to build up, and then it will start to overflow, and then you'll start to feel so much more, I guess, love it, more happy and more affectionate, and more less resentment and more positivity in the relationship for sure.
Yeah, nice. My husband and I actually gave a talk on Friday night about the third entity. Literally
Yeah.
what you're speaking to. Yeah, that relationship, and like how we'll use it as a source of decision making actually. And I was just actually like reflecting on that. It's like that is sort of some of the culture that is living under that, is that this relationship has wisdom. And actually what I think is really powerful, what you were just sharing about you and Michael, is that even with all the depletion of this bubble that you speak to, it was still obviously had some wisdom that it was able to call you guys back into connection, which is quite profound actually. It's something like I always feel like I trust these relationships more than I trust, the individuals inside, like it's like I think that that wisdom that brought me and my husband together is more wise than anything I could come up with myself,
Yeah, it's so profound, and, like, when you see 2 people drawn together in relationship, you're like,
Yeah,
"What brought you here?" 'Cause if they're fighting and they're,
yeah,
like, at each other, but you zoom out and you see, you're like, "Oh, I get it. There is something so much deeper here that you guys." Yeah, there's a
yeah.
reason, that you're together, and it makes so much sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's, something that people always talk about is like, "Oh, you need to have the same values as your partner." And I actually always, like, question that because I think there's a particular version of the values actually that draws us together, which are maybe not the ones that we might write down on some sort of journaling practice. Do you know what I mean? And I think there's that always interests me inside of like, yeah, what is that current of, that is calling you together, and what is actually and I guess there's a curiosity for me with you guys of like often I see the relationship as trying to create something, whether that be children, whether that be a business. Now it sounds like you guys have gone into business again. Like there's some curiosity there of like what does the relationship want from you guys in this moment as you've been drawn back together in this chapter.
Yeah, I love that question. I love that thought actually. I haven't really put it into mind like that. So yeah, I can just visually can see that as well. So thank you for sharing that. But yeah, I think for us, what I can really feel is there's this deep undercurrent that we need to help other couples and serve other couples. And I know it sounds a bit cheesy, in the business sense, but it feels really alive for us that, we never would have pictured that we'd be in this sort of space or helping other couples to see this. But I think our journey and our authenticity and our values of life and wanting to help and serve others is runs quite deep for both of us. So yeah, I think this our relationship in this chapter of our lives has brought us together to serve more couples to realize that actually it's possible. It's possible to, like you were saying it earlier, that to go through some tough times, but the potential of a relationship is huge if you are willing to invest your time and your energy into it as well.
Yeah, amazing. And I'd love to hear, you've obviously helped a lot of couples, you've obviously worked with a lot of people that done this. Like what has been like the biggest transformation that you've seen and what do you think caused that transformation?
Mm. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of like particular couples in mind as well, but there's so many versions. But ultimately, underneath all of this, I feel like we've just been same as what we experienced, but there's two people just trying to get their needs met, but without having the ability to communicate it or understand it themselves. So once the biggest transformation is actually helping them to see how they're playing into this dynamic, and then allowing them to own that part. And once they've owned it, once they can see it, obviously we can't call it out. They need to see it themselves. They need to see how they're playing out into this breakdown of a relationship. Then they're able to kind of soften everything. And that's what I was just talking to a couple last night. We just finished our 12-week program with them, and we're just having a bit of a chat. They were like, "Please, we didn't get to say thanks enough." And I'm like, "Okay, if you'd like to." But it was really nice to hear. They were a couple where they'd kind of come to the point where the kids had empty nesters, kids had left home, and they were even questioning whether they were going to break up in their mid 50s, so still young. But yeah, they were like, "Oh, I don't think we can do this anymore. It's just too toxic." But the change for them came when they said the energy just changed. That they were stuck. They were like in this loggerheads. They were like trying to convince each other that their side's true and their side's true. And when there's two people trying to prove the same thing at the same time, nobody's going to convince each other. No one's going to win because we're just not able to hear or understand their other person's side. So allowing them to come back into that emotional safety by, calming into communication and having some sort of framework and letting them express themselves safely, it just melts, it just shifts and like, "Oh my gosh, so you're saying this because your behavior is showing this, and this is why you're doing that," and seeing that that maybe that behavior has actually come from a childhood wound or something that's been playing out in their own life for many years, and that's why they get so protective or defensive. And yeah, it's kind of it's breaking it all down to help them to realize that underneath all of that is love, and underneath all of that is the intention of wanting to be together, but just not knowing how to break down that
Mhm.
battle. the power struggle, I suppose it is. Yeah.
It's such a curious thing that we do in relationships, isn't it? Like we come together with somebody, we like them because of how different they are to us.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
something that happens over time when we're just like, why are you not more like me? Why are you so
Yeah.
different? Yeah.
It's so true, and then we try and mold them into us. We're like, "You should just be more like me, do it this way," and that's what I was doing. I'm like, "You should just be like me," and then I've realized that actually I love you for you, and I don't want you to be
Yeah.
me, and but there was a time where I did. I was definitely like, "You need to
Yeah.
be more this way because this is how I do it." Yeah. Yeah.
Totally. And I also think there's just the leaning into that unknown place. I think the more awareness that I've had around that the relationship is doing its own thing, I do not need to do anything to it or even adjust anything in it. It's like, okay, it's gonna keep moving, you know. It's like that has actually been huge, I think. And actually I love what you said earlier about like the deepening and the new chapters because that's really something that's happened to me since we've had children. It's like I didn't realize before we had kids how transactional our intimacy was. Like you speaking to this idea of like, I have needs, you have needs, we meet these needs, you know? It's like now I feel like there's in this next chapter that's upwelling and for us, it's like, oh, that's not even where we're living from anymore. We're not trying to, we're not having a transactional experience. And what that actually looks like for us is that we're not so concerned or worried if we don't make love, you know? If we don't come together for intimacy or something, it's like it's not this doesn't mean that the world is gonna end. It doesn't mean the relationship's gonna break, you know? And I think that's
Right.
actually like, you know, it sounds bad in some ways, like the drop off of intimacy, but I can see the power of what that's creating for us inside of the union. So that's also quite exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It, like, deepens, I think, as well, like you said, and intimacy becomes I don't like, I remember that phase too, like, just reflecting back on my time in that. But intimacy now for us, it's like this next level because we have the space and we have the time and we have the ability to yeah, to spend hours if we choose, you know? So it's like I remember with kids, we were like, "Oh, quick, let's just we feel like we have
Yeah.
to, do this." But actually now it's just this whole yeah, it's this whole different depth of intimacy as well. So, yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, yeah, I would love if there's any more like really practical things that you think that you might offer
Mm.
to like couples that are in that roommate phase that want to rekindle the intimacy. I know you mentioned there's a
Mm.
piece around like what's on your heart. Are there any other verbal prompts or practices that you guys use?
Mm. Yeah, great question. I think there's an importance that what happens often when we're in that roommate phase is we forget appreciation, or
Yes.
maybe we don't allow it to come through as easily. Like me, I'm like, I'm not saying thank you. I'm not appreciating you because you should just be doing that anyway. That's your part of your job. So I think that is something that is really simple but really effective for long-term relationship. Is not just speaking thank you for picking out the washing, but appreciating things that you see in your partner and appreciating things that you acknowledge and notice when they make a little effort, even if it's not perfect. Like, I think that was a big thing for me. Like, um, I would expect Michael to start be the leader, and can you just organize this for me, babe? That's be really helpful. But then when he didn't get it right, I'd be the first to criticize. So, just taking that step back and just being grateful that they tried and expressing that, and not in a condescending way, but in a real like, yeah, I see what you're doing there and it really means a lot. Thank you. So I think for that we have to notice that sometimes we have a shield around our heart as well, that we protect ourselves, and that shield, when we're in that space, it's really hard to give and receive gratitude or appreciation because like that armor is up because we're not really seeing our partner for what they're doing because we're reserving ourselves and our own safety. But if we can, what I noticed in my journey of our relationship is once I can kind of soften and let down my guard and open my heart more, I see more things more easily and I can really speak into them and not feel maybe it's forced or it's hesitant or it's like, just got to say this and you have to do it. So it's a whole different energy when you can be conscious of the protection that we have around ourself that doesn't allude to creating more safety and more openness in the relationship as well. So Does that
Nice.
make sense?
That's
Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
beautiful. Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners?
Mm. I feel like there was something else that I was popping into the notes, and I feel like I just want to touch on it now. But what helped me and what helps a lot of couples is to sometimes zoom out of the relationship and see that often there's a couple of patterns that are at play. I love patterns. I feel like patterns and cycles are such a common thing in a relationship. And when you can see it, it's a real like aha moment for a lot of couples that we work with. And they can see, oh, so this perpetual problem that they have and this cycle that they're in is actually, if we can remind ourselves that we're separate from that, like the cycle is the problem, the pattern that they're in. So whether they're, I don't know, whether one like gets triggered by this and it flares off a part of your partner that causes conflict, and then you kind of distance yourself for a day or two, and then we go into our separate spaces, and then we're a bit cranky with each other. And but if you can see that the trigger that started this whole conflict was maybe potentially for Michael and I. I'll give you an example to help put it into context. But my trigger was when I didn't know what Michael was doing or where he was. So
Mm.
because he would often go, "Oh, I'll be back later." And with
Yeah.
two little kids, when I was home by myself with two little kids, back later is feels like, hang on, in my nervous system was freaking out because again, I'm a bit more of an anxious wiring, and I needed to have information and know. So inside of me, I'm like, so when will that be? And he's like, and his value and his personality is freedom and just go with the flow and just see how it unfolds. But that would really trigger me. So when I didn't know and he would just be flippant on time frames and things, I would get quite short and nasty. But what we figured out is like, oh, why is that important to you? Why is it important that you understand, where I'm going to be and what time? And that just helps him to go, oh, I can meet that for you. I can give you a time frame if that's why it's important. But that in itself, realizing that was a pattern, and that pattern happened several times in our relationship, and then I'd build resentment, and then I'd get so frustrated and not knowing, and then I'd be texting and I'd be like, where are you? Why aren't you home? You told me you'd be home half an hour. And she'd be like, whoa, chill out. So then we can kind of break that pattern by simple, like, yeah, I'm going to be home by this, and if I'm not, I'll text you and I'll let you know, and I'll be home a bit later. And just understanding that that actual is this, it's not your partner that's the problem, it's the cycle. And if we can remove ourselves from the cycle, then we can kind of start to realize that there is solutions and there is ways around breaking this monotony. Mm.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love that. Sounds like there's some good yeah, like attachment bonding pieces and understanding of functioning. It's really been helpful. Love that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. So if anyone is listening to this and they're like, I need to get deeper into Amy's world and understand more of that, where can people find you?
Yeah, great question. We have a podcast, Thrive Again, Your Relationship Podcast. And obviously our website, just michaelandamy.com.au. So, and we're on socials as well, Instagram and Facebook, just Michael and Amy. So yeah, it'd be great to connect if anyone feels drawn.
Yeah, fabulous.